Hey 뱅크리스 Korea, thanks for tuning into our first episode on 한국의 다오. This is Daniel Huang from 한다오. So I heard 한다오 is the first DAO of Korea. How did it start and when did it start?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Let's say, I think the concept of DAO is very nuanced and there's like a whole spectrum. But yeah, I can provide some of the initial inception and where we are right now, what were perhaps the motivations, and then we can talk about perhaps like the differences between social DAOs, investment DAOs, and how each of those can be set up, and perhaps even like the progressive DAOification of where we started from to like what we eventually want to see, and perhaps also some like the regulatory difficulties. But yeah, I think so Handao didn't start just because like it was like we wanted to start a DAO. There was actually this was around the time where CryptoPunks was like heating up. And I'd been, I remember like when CryptoKitties had first launched, and that was like a really cool opportunity to see like NFTs. We saw CryptoPunks kind of exploding. The whole world started paying attention, and a lot of artists were trying to like get into it and see like how they could make money or like be able to monetize a lot of their craft. The problem was that I probably had like a pretty strong opinion about what NFTs should be. And right, NFTs can be so many different things. There's obviously like this sort of highly speculative sort of sneaker reselling concept that I think CryptoPunks was basically like, and there's also like NFTs that can be used for like bills of lading, right? Like contracts or something like that. So when I saw like these NFTs being, right, these like pixelated images of like these like punks, and then just selling for like tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, I kind of had this sort of, I didn't like how they were so taking over the narrative so completely, and then everyone was thinking NFT is that and not something else. So I sort of had like this beef with like the NFT, the CryptoPunk side of things. I think they're great, but like I didn't think it was like the perfect manifestation of what NFTs can be. And then also like this crypto evolution or type of mass adoption that we're having is not just like a Western concept, right? The whole world should be using it.
Right.
And then, right, the people behind CryptoPunks, no offense, like just kind of very small group of a particular ethnicity, for example, right? And so I was just kind of thinking like, oh, maybe we need some more ideas or cultural like influence to kind of explore different parts of what NFTs can be. So if there's like a particular like certain group, right, they might have certain ideas of like what NFTs can be, but other people might have different ideas of what NFTs can be, and maybe that's a cultural thing, right, like the differences between like capitalism or like socialism, etc. So what I ended up doing was I just started trying to help certain artists that I knew like deploy their own contracts, how to use like different smart contract storage systems like Arweave or IPFS, and then specifically Korean artists, right? Because like if you want to have more cultural influence or contributions to like this global technology, then you need to have like this sort of kind of concentrated group of that is able to display their culture, and then be able to provide some certain other ideas if they have different ideas, right? If there's like a very Western viewpoint of what NFTs can be doing, right? And then there's like a different Eastern or whatever for Global South, then their ideas can kind of be commingled into what's going on. And like it's basically adding more diversity for what value propositions NFTs can be. So basically that's how it started. Just me communicating with artists. So like I remember I was a fan of this Korean artist, Mr. Misang's work. There was actually like this really interesting article that came out in Foreign Policy in 2016 or 2017, not related to crypto at all, but it was about this phenomenon called, I don't know if I could swear here, there's this phenomenon in Korean called 시발비용.
Yeah.
And so there's, you can beep that out, I guess.
No,
but there's
okay.
this foreign policy article that was describing this like Korean phenomenon. 시발비용 basically means like FU spending kind of stuff, right? Like, because there's like this crazy socioeconomic gap in Korea, and like, basically the concept around that was it's so expensive to do certain things or so out of people's range that people will just spend money because they're never able to save up enough money to get to that point, like saving for an apartment or something like that. And Mr. Misang's artwork was very particularly well suited to like that type of socioeconomic concept. A lot of Mr. Misang's artwork is around like this social commentary of like breaking out of the rat race and everyone's like kind of the same. And so I remember like this was like a fantastic, like I thought his art was so meaningful. And then I think it was like 2020 or 2021 around that time where CryptoPunks was like booming, and then Mr. Misang was starting to upload his work on as NFTs. And I was following his like Instagram, I think, or Twitter, and maybe his Instagram, and he had put up a story saying like, I'm having trouble like uploading my art to like super rare. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Like this guy's art, he's like trying to explore it. And like, I knew how to write contracts and stuff. So I DM'd him. I'm like, hey, Mr. Misang, I'm a big fan. Let me help you, right?
Oh,
there was basically a bug on the super rare contracts where he was trying to set a reserve price, I think. And that reserve price, the contracts for that was kind of buggy. Like the UX from like the website, it was not working, and we had to like, so basically I helped him figure out like how to do like replacement transactions through MetaMask and eventually set reserve prices for art. And then I think Mr. Misang went off and became, at the time, for almost like a year and a half, he was the #1 grossing super rare artist in the world, which was really cool. And so like, and then there was some other Korean artists like Yo-Yo Jin and some others that I also helped them deploy their own contracts. A friend of mine wanted to gift a certain Korean artist's artwork as an NFT to someone else, and so I helped them create. And so it just became like I had this idea of like, right, cultural grouping and organizing like a specific like cultural voice to be able to be displayed on the world stage can contribute to the diversity of thought of how NFTs can be distributed, right? Obviously, right, like what ended up happening is like a lot of really same things are happening in all these different countries because they're just copying CryptoPunks, right? They all wanted their own generative PFPs or something, which is, right, not the point, but, right, at least people knew, right? And I was like, okay, we can get more voices into the chat, have more diversity. There's more people that can participate. I can at least tell them how to mint their own deploy their own smart contracts, to mint their own NFTs that's self-sovereign and not using like a shared smart contract that OpenSea provides, right? Because OpenSea had like this opportunity where you could just like upload your artwork, and they would all the different people who are uploading their art as NFTs on OpenSea were just using one shared smart contract. It was not their own, right? And then they were using like these different like centralized ways of hosting the art instead of like on a semi to fully permanent storage system like IPFS or OE. And so that was like the beginning, right? I wasn't even thinking of DAOs. And then I think some other people were finding out like, oh, this is really cool. How can we help, right? And then I was like, hey, maybe we can work together, right? Like this is not like a company that I want to form, but there's other people that are very talented at what they do. They can contribute. So how do we coordinate together? Right. And DAOs were a really good example of like, you don't have to set up a company, but you're able to work with a lot of different people in the ecosystem, and then they can contribute, and there can be some form of like governance over a shared resource. The shared resource being our time, like the direction that we both decide on, the governance of how do we spend our time to do a certain initiative. And then also if there's money involved, how do we govern like a shared pool of money that we all put in a pot together to do certain things, right? And that could be from educational events to like even like contributing or buying like some artists' NFTs. If they're doing a drop, we can like guarantee that, we have all this money together, we've decided, we put out a governance proposal, we decided like what we want to vote on or support, and then we can support that. So then it was like, okay, so how can we do this? There's a lot of really talented, really cool people that we can start doing work with, but then, right, we wanted to, it's like a pseudo sort of DAO. Like we want to eventually get to a point where we can formally organize that type of thing. I don't think Handao is like its ultimate transcendent like DAO manifestation, because right, if we even break down like the acronym DAO is like decentralized autonomous organization. Like it's not decentralized, right? There's various levels of like anonymity that we can have. Like autonomous, that's like also, what is it autonomous? Probably not. Like there's not like autonomously executing certain governance contracts, right? And then like the organization, it's an organization, right? Like I really do see like a lot of what we can have, let's say in this spectrum of completely decentralized and autonomous to like more centralized and not as autonomous. Like it's a coordination tool to allow some of these things to happen. So that's kind of like how Handao started, just like collecting a lot of different people. And I can get into the maybe like where we are, the difference between like social and venture DAOs, and on maybe later if you have questions. But
okay.
yeah, that's like basically like how it started, and we have a collection of people that are helping and organizing. So
okay, yeah, I think it's a really cool story. You helped onboard like those Korean artists climb up the Web3 ladder. Yeah, but I want to hear more about the progressive DAOification. Like, how is it going right now?
Yeah. So I think this definitely has to do with the, let's say, frameworks of how DAOs are formed, and how easy it is to sort of implement those frameworks. So let's, if we go back into like 16, 17, that in Ethereum, there was this like very famous, like the first DAO, right? It was literally called the DAO, which is a venture DAO, right? The framework is like people put a bunch of money into a smart contract, and then they were issued like different shares of that, depending on how much money they provided, and they all get to decide on which projects to like invest in, right? And then there was this very like important, I would say, mechanism that allowed you to also like rage quit. Like you can take your money out anytime. And also it was anonymous, right? The people that were contributing their Ethereum, and they're just coming from like a Ethereum address, right? So like if you didn't have ENS or something, you don't know who's contributing. But it's like purely like utilitarian in terms of what it was able to do. The DAO later got hacked, and that's why we had a fork between Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. But that's the venture DAO model, right? Based on the money that you put in, you get a proportional share of like tokens or shares that allow you to decide collectively on what to do. And then once you decide, if there's a certain threshold or quorum on the shares that are voting on a particular proposal for, let's say in the specific case of the DAO, a project to invest in, it automatically goes there. So that was like this venture DAO framework, which very like cut and dry, easy, right? Money in. If you have enough money, and if you have enough of the majority, then something happens. Then I think maybe last year, 2021, we had this like concept of, oh, right, there's this, I think people are trying to build these things called like social DAOs, which is like kind of pay to play, not play to play, but like contribute to play, where you do certain contributions and then you can earn certain rewards, which are presumably DAO tokens, and then you can have this type of governance, right? You don't have to put money in, right? But I really do think that there's a very clear distinction between like attempted social DAOs and venture DAOs. So I described the venture DAO concept. Now, like from my perspective, like the social DAO concept, I think is really interesting, right? So like social DAOs, I think, have a very difficult time manifesting itself if you are using a venture DAO model, like an investment DAO model, like the DAO. So for example, right, let's imagine like a hypothetical social DAO where everyone comes together, right? Let's say it's not like investment related. Let's say like this social DAO, right? We want to have like a governance-based coordination tool that wants to save the whales or educate people on whales in the ocean. Cool, right? There's people who are like-minded that want to come together. So like now you're trying to have a coordination system to govern what time is spent of the people, like the resources, shared people's time on what kind of whale do we want to save or something, or what kind of whale do we want to educate, or what kind of trip do we want to take, right? So there's the time, and then there's also potentially, right, money that's involved, like people's own personal money, or if there's money in the treasury. Let's not talk about like money in the treasury yet, but so now there's this idea, there's a bunch of people that want to contribute to the idea of saving whales, and these people need to like also start voting, right? So, but in the process of like any type of DAO that wants to be created, we have to, right, do some startup stuff, right? Like someone needs to like control like the social media Twitter account. Someone needs to like write a blog post. Someone needs to help set up the Discord server. Someone needs to, et cetera, right? There's all these different operational aspects of a like loosely formed organization that needs to work. And so how do you incentivize people to contribute? Yeah, you can perhaps contribute or rely on contributions from people that want to participate in saving the whales DAO, or let's say whale DAO. But then you can't like have that you can't guarantee that, right? Because someone's like, oh, I can spend a lot of time now, but then they get busy with work, right? Their full-time job, and then they're not contributing anymore. And then it's just going to be like this whole like potential bystander effect. So what a lot of social DAOs I've seen try is that they incentivize you, right? Kind of like what the whole purpose of one of the biggest purposes of cryptocurrency are, right? You incentivize with tokens because those tokens can potentially be worth something later, right? Like as an example, like Bitcoin miners could care today. Most of the Bitcoin miners could care less about decentralization, self-sovereignty, censorship resistance, or immutability, right? Like, but they do it because the Bitcoin miner's purpose is to make money. The side effect of pursuing that profit seeking is the property of decentralization. And so this concept is basically like this type of behavior that you want is incentivized. That type of behavior cannot rely on this type of altruism for just people like freely giving their time, because eventually there's going to be a point where they can't provide their time. So in this concept, right, these social DAOs are saying, okay, we're going to issue tokens. And right, if you write a blog post, if you man the social media account, if you create we're going to give you certain tokens that we could print out of thin air, right? Because like these crypto tokens can be printed out of thin air. Okay, cool. So now you've had these tokens that you've given to people. They're arguably only useful for governance, right? Because you're going to now use those tokens to do voting, right? Because like now, if you've contributed a lot, like if you've done like the blog post, Twitter, you've got a lot of tokens, and now those tokens can be used for voting on how to direct the DAO, right? Because if you're another proposal is like someone's like, hey, I'm going to put up a proposal. Let's do a vacation spot where we show whales, right? So now everyone's going to have to vote. So the people who have contributed a lot have more power because they arguably have more stake in the system. They've contributed their time. So that's cool and that's great, right? Maybe you can even think of it like a sort of like semi-soul-bound type of token. Closed system. The people who contribute are the ones that hold the tokens. The problem here is where like the venture DAO model gets mixed in, where people try to use the venture DAO model and adapt it to a social DAO model, where right, the venture DAO model allows anyone to buy in, right? Like literally buy in, right? Because they put their external capital in, right? Like their Ethereum or whatever other cryptocurrency, and they get out these tokens that give them governance rights over the treasury. Where like the treasury in this case is treasury of human resources, time, and then also money. So now, right, the moment that you allow the people that have like contributed to these social DAOs to sell the tokens to anyone else outside of that system, I feel like there's a breaking point. Because now what the value of that governance token that the social DAO is rewarded to people that have contributed to the DAO early on in the days, right, to incentivize them, and we can talk about the incentivization, what that actually means in this case, is lost because, right, people who have contributed a lot get those tokens because they've contributed a lot, and then because they've contributed a lot, those tokens mean like you have these governance rights. When you sell that token to someone who has never contributed to the DAO, a person who has, let's say there's a Japanese whale hunter, right? Mm-hmm. Like a lot of Japanese people like hunt, right? There's controversy, right? They were like, hey, you know what? we have a lot of money. We can buy these whale DAO tokens and then mess with them. We can start exerting our will. So now someone who is literally opposed to the purpose of that DAO is able to purchase them because it's a free market, right? When you sell these DAO tokens, you put them on like a decentralized exchange, there's like an LP or something like that. And then now that it defeats the whole purpose because someone who's never contributed, who may even have opposing views, are able to access this social DAO community, and then it just like, well, then what's the point, right? And there's this like point in like, people may contribute early on to a DAO, which is great. You need like these Twitter, this Discord set up, because maybe they also have the potential like, oh, I'm going to sell later, right? I'm going to sell these tokens later because I'm going to put all my effort in, and then I want to see the DAO token rise in value, and then my efforts are valued, right? But then the problem there is that like you allow external like engagement, which might be antithetical to like the social DAO. So I think like that is one of the most difficult problems to figure out or fix. And that's why like when we were doing HonDAO, we're like, okay, apart from like the regulatory issues that like issuing tokens is, right? And we didn't want to have to go into that. It was very difficult because we were also trying to do like this, we want to contribute to like the ecosystem, right? Buy NFTs. We want to support projects like tools that we can dog food back to the Korean artist community. If we allow like this venture DAO model, like tokens in means governance shares out for those people, and then also adapt it to like a social where anyone can contribute and participate. How do we make that make sense? And it was very difficult. And I don't think there's a very clear solution to how you can have both venture DAO and also social DAO concepts. And so that's what we were having issue. And so what we did is we basically set up like a group of a very diverse mix of 25 members who are like artists, engineers, gallery owners and stuff that would be able to like show a mixture of like a diverse mixture of the population set that could be contributing to a social DAO, but we were piloting it. And we basically didn't release it into like a social DAO concept, because it's difficult. And we've been piloting for like almost 2 years now, right? Because like it's difficult to figure out. But that's what I think the social DAO, venture DAO concept is hard. It's hard for social DAOs to actually exist in their purity using a venture DAO concept.
Right.
So
okay, yeah. So I want to go back to HanDAO story. What's like the vision of HanDAO? Like if everything goes so well, like whether it's fully DAOified or not, like what's the end?
Yeah, there's this really interesting concept that we had initially, and I'll be actually presenting on this later, but like this concept called SPOs. It's this play on this concept called SPV, special purpose vehicles, right? You can gather a bunch of those types of things. What you can have is like, so special purpose organization is this concept that we came up with where you can, right, within a community, right, if we consider DAOs or the type of things that you could do with a DAO as like a coordination tool, you can have like very specific initiatives that can make use of these coordination tools and governance methods. So basically, let's say there's a lot of different initiatives. A lot of the people don't have to all contribute to that particular initiative because maybe it's not within their wheelhouse, right? So you can have like these things called like SPOs where different people that make sense to work together can group together. They, like the DAO can vote on creating like these, like we can call them working groups or subcommittees or something like that, where people can come together, they get funding from the treasury, they get time, agreement, alignment on the brand or whatever, and then they could work on that thing, and once they're done, they can disband, right? It's like a single purpose like way of using like the mothership of a coordination tool that a DAO is going to offer to do those type of initiatives. Another really interesting, so that's a general abstract concept that we were like, oh, this could what we can do, and it's harder than it seems. Also, there's like, you need to have like really dedicated people who could spend a lot of time, incentivize that, etc. a really specific example of an SPO concept that I want to see is like a 홍길동 model. So we call it the 홍길동 model. I'm sure like your audience knows the 홍길동, but we're calling it 한길동.
Oh, okay.
So like 홍길동 is kind of like a Robin Hood of Korea, right? He goes like steals from the rich, but he brings back like goods to people, right? So one of the problems with a lot of DAOs is that most DAOs make use of a multi-sig that controls their treasury of funds. So like when you see these NFT drops, right? Like there's like a big NFT drops happening. There's a specific period of time where you need to like bid, right? You have to buy it quickly. If you're using a multi-sig, it's way too slow, right? Multi-sig, you have to like get a lot of people's signatures, execute. It's very difficult to use like Wallet Connect. Some of these NFT drops don't use Wallet Connect very well or don't have that integration. It's a lot easier for you to use an externally owned account, like a single like non-custodial wallet that one person controls. They can just go in and do that type of thing. And so the concept was like, oh yeah, we can do an SPO of people. We can contribute to like this proposal, and we can designate a particular member of the DAO to get some money from the DAO, right? Let's say like a couple ETH, and say, hey, your goal is to go off and find like these really great NFT drops, and then you have to bring the money back, or you have to bring the NFTs back to the DAO, right? And so they go off like on their journey, 한길동 style, bring some of this money back, right, in value, and then they come back to the DAO, right? And then you can deploy a bunch of those other people, and once it's done, right, you can disband it, right? Or maybe it continues going. It's a very specific, special purpose organization that is for NFT drop purchasing. And if you can automate that, right, where you sort of have like these like bounty boards, right, then you can just like have that not be so centralized, and you have a decentralized way of like people contributing things to the bounty board with like, hey, I want 홍길동 to go buy like these types of NFTs, and then people vote on it, and then people can go and like, oh, it's just like in anime guilds, right? You go like look at the board and say like, what do I want to take, and then I'll go take that, and they go off, right? And then there's like a reward mechanism, and there's enforcement and stuff like that. But I think that would be, I still believe that's a really cool concept that can be done with using DAOs as a coordination tool that can effectively execute management and governance over financial, like capital resources, financial resources, and human resources, and then also brand resources. Because one of the points, like there's very specific NFT collector DAOs, that's their MO, right? There's that modus operandi, like they want to collect those things, but that can be one of the things that not everyone has interest in. So I think that would be the manifestation. The other more ideal manifestation is perhaps like what would look like a social DAO. Like Hano doesn't have a token. We don't like, because it's like a bad, like you can't do that in a regulatory like very clear way, right? So we just have our own sort of community that's closed. It's not decentralized, right? It's just like we decide, like we put our own money in, right? We don't take anyone, and then we just decide like what we can like do. And mainly they've been educational workshops, right? We do like virtual conferences, in-person conferences. We use our own money to like throw these like educational events. There's this like educational seminar that we supported, right? Ludium, Tongsun.
Yeah.
And that was like, it was literally like classes that were like go for 6 months where people come in. And then we've done like these like networking events but basically it's like education. And then also getting other people who are outside of Korea to understand like what can be done, right? If there's like someone who needs to work with like, or interested in working with Korea, then we have like a very, very diverse mix of people, right? Engineers, artists, gallery owners, financial, like, investors and stuff. Not investors, but like, services people that can give you all those different types of things in terms of service, so.
Okay. So like I really like this 한길동.
Yeah.
But like what's the membership structure of Handa? Like maybe in the future.
Yeah, hopefully like if we can figure out like what it looks like for a social DAO token, I don't know. Just maybe regulatory environment needs to get better, but to be on the right legal side, like we can't do that. I think like maybe it's like, yeah, I think people just contributions, and then we could just like bring more people who could just like do like privately just like manage money or just like have our own money and just like vote on things together. But yeah, it's difficult, right?
Okay.
Like, but I think, yeah, we could just continue doing that. I think opening up to public and tokens is very difficult, but yeah, anyone can do that, right? You just have a group of friends, and then we just like say like, hey, we're gonna decide to do this, and then we go off and just, you know, it's like really good example of K, right? Because like K is like a good example of like there's a trust-based model where everyone puts money in, and then people decide like one person's gonna get the money after each cycle, and then they can go do something with it. But right, I think in English it's called like rotating savings and credit associations, ROSCA. Is the general term for like, because I think K exists in many cultures, right? A lot of Korean immigrants in America had to use K because they couldn't get like loans from banks, right? Because they had no credit. But I think this is not a K, but like it's a very like what can we do with our time to work together on and stuff. So
okay, I guess we're running out of time. Like, do you have anything else to say to 뱅크리스 Korea viewers, readers? Like,
I think my motivation, I think, was I'm like Kyopo, so like I'm like Korean by blood, but people also don't think I'm Korean. But like I think that what is really important is that different cultures or ethnic groups I'm not saying they should be closed off, but like they have a really important part to play in providing a diversity of ideas and thoughts into the global scale in this technology that's being developed, even DAOs and organizations or research and like how these manifest. Like it shouldn't only come from a very particular group of people, right? If it's only like the Western world that gets to decide a technology that's going to impact the entire world, right? We need to have more people that can identify together and move as a group so that they have like a seat at the table, right? Like it's like the UN, right? If you don't have a voice at the UN, like a seat at the UN representing your country or something, they're going to make decisions that are going to be global in nature that may not may affect you, but you don't have a voice, which is, I think. And so I think if people can like group together collectively, and in this particular case, in the beginning of Honda, I was like allowing like the art side of things to be collectively like what Korean is, and then be provided to the world, I think would be good. And I don't think like there's necessarily been too much of that, right? Like I think a lot of people already just do like CryptoPunks kind of things, PFPs, but yeah, I think it's I think if there can be like a unified voice from different cultures and that unified voice from different cultures can be meaningfully different in terms of the value is provided, then I think that can adjust like the way that the technology is built on behalf of people. So that's it.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for all the great stories. I think I learned quite a lot today.
Yeah.
Okay. Ciao. Oh, actually, I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was gonna ask. Do you recommend any other Korean DAOs to be the next interviewees?
Sporto.